Okay, so I am juiced up right now. I just got off a conversation with an old friend of mine, and the reason why is because I spoke to him earlier in the day today, and he called me up. I haven't spoken to him probably in I don't know 7, 8, 9, 10 years. A friend of mine, and he calls me up, and we're having like this casual conversation. Then all of a sudden, it starts to switch into, of course, we all love it, the sales conversation, the insurance sales conversation, and what was interesting is that I saw it coming from a mile away once it started happening, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm just not in the mood for this," and I shut it down pretty quickly. So because I've been in the sales game just a little bit, and I've read a lot of books, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts, and I have my own experience with sales, and I'm no guru here, but I do know sales 101, 102 a little bit. So I want to share with you certain tips that he could have used against me in order to loop me back into the conversation to get me to just get a little bit closer to the sale. I don't know if I'd ever buy it, but to get me a little bit closer, just to get me on his radar. And the reason why this is so important is because so many people feel so uncomfortable with sales, and a lot of the fears that he was going through and the things that he was thinking about, I think are very, very common. And the reason why I know what he was thinking about is because that's just called him back, and I told him, "Hey, buddy, I know we got on the call earlier today. Any chance you'd be open to hearing some feedback from this conversation, just because this is something that I do, and I just want to like know if you're okay with it." And we just got off a 15, 20 minute conversation, and he was so excited about it, and we were just talking about it. It was funny because like we were analyzing the sale that he did to me, and I was just telling him my side of it, he was telling me his side of it, and we were able to have this like open conversation that I think he's only going to help him do so much better moving forward. And the first thing that I mentioned to him is the idea of looping. So if you aren't familiar of looping, so looping is this concept where a I have a book over here called, I'm going to get it for you. It's called Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort. So he's the guy who is the Way of the Wolf. He made all that money during the recession, and he has the Wolf of Wall Street. He's the Wolf of Wall Street, and he is master at sales. So in his book, he has this concept of looping. And the basic idea of looping is you want to constantly get the person back into the conversation. And one of the things that I told him is that he was trying to get me, he does insurance and he does financial planning. And I said, like, I'm good. We have like a family financial planner. Like, don't worry about it. Like, it's totally fine. And then I said to him, and I was upset I said this to him live, that I actually do my own investing. Like, I'm into my own stuff. And then he's like, okay, not a problem. And then like the conversation just ended. And afterwards, I was like, shoot, he had like an amazing opportunity to loop me back in just by asking me what type of investments I want to get and what type of investments do I actually look for when I look to invest, just to continue the casual conversation about what it is that he's trying to sell me on. And that idea of looping is constantly bringing people back into the conversation, because it's like, if you think about it, people are playing ping pong with you, and most people are being polite about it. And if they're not polite, then you're probably not in the conversation on the phone with them anyway. And they're hitting the ball back and forth to you, but they're not hitting it directly to you. And sometimes they might hit it off the table on purpose, and you have to like go far out to hit it back onto the table. And what we want to try to do is we want to continue to play this game of ping pong back and forth. And by doing that, we can constantly bring the conversation back in by calling them. And what we have to start to do is we have to start to recognize that we have to bring those people in. So the question is like, how do we do that? So the second thing I told him is like, we have to come up with a list of common objections. So in most markets, when you are speaking to somebody, when you are selling something to someone, there are going to be so many things that are going to come up that are going to just be repetitive. Like, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, I have to speak to my spouse, right? In this specific case, when it comes to insurance, like, I'm good, I already have insurance. I'm not good, but like, don't talk to me. Right? I don't know what else there might be, but there's only like a handful of things that somebody might say to you. But if that's the case, we then have to realize that we have to have an answer to that. So if he's having conversations all day about insurance, and he might be getting rejected all day about insurance, then guess what? He has to have answers to those rejections. And if you don't know what those questions are, then you got to get on more sales calls. You got to start to speak to people. Think about yourself, put yourself in those shoes. If somebody would try to sell you for that thing, what would you say to them? Ask your friends, like, if somebody wanted to sell you insurance, what would you say? And then once you do that, then you have a reasonable response to respond back to them, because like, you know, it's coming. What we have to realize is that the sale only begins once the person says no. If the person doesn't say no, it's not a sale. It's like, for example, if I go to Home Depot and I say, hey, Mr. Home Depot guy, where is the ladder? And he tells me it's on aisle 14. And I walk to aisle 14 and I get this ladder. I go to checkout and I buy this ladder. Did he sell me the ladder? No, I just needed to buy something. And I ended up like asking him because he was like the closest person to me. When we are looking at sales, we have to recognize that once a person says no, that's when the sale begins. So if the gentleman at Home Depot said to me, the ladders are on aisle 14, but you might want to buy a helmet with that because this other guy bought a ladder last time. And guess what? He fell and he broke his head. So then I go, I'm like, that's a great idea. I'm going to go buy a helmet too. Then guess what? That's not even on my mind. That's a sale. He's asking me what else I really want, or what else I might not even know what I really want, but he might be telling me, hey, this is something that you might actually need. And I think for so many people, they don't recognize that if we can work on these common objections and really just like literally sit down, write them down, and come up with an answer to them, like an answer that you can loop them back into the conversation. And you might ask yourself, okay, but Bennett, like, how do I do that? Like, what do I need to do in order to loop more people back in the conversation? And I would say a big part about this looping is you need to ask an open-ended question. An open-ended question makes the person give an answer that's not yes or no. And I'll give you an example. What's the difference between me asking you, do you like pizza versus what pizza do you like? And you might say to yourself, well, the first answer is yes or no. And the second answer is I like Sicilian. I like, I don't know, pepperoni or cheese. I don't know, whatever it might be that you like on your pizza. But guess what? The second question is going to allow me to ask another question. Oh, really? What's your favorite restaurant that you like getting this pizza at? And the difference between the two of them is this open-endedness. And the question is, okay, so Bennett, that's nice. How do I ask an open-ended question? The trick is in the word what. If you could start the conversation with the word what, I'm telling you, it's a game changer, not just in sales, but just in conversation. If you're somebody who struggles with having a conversation, ask a what question, because then they have to give you something that you could just ask what about. What pizza do you like? I like Sicilian. Oh, really? What restaurant do you like getting your Sicilian at? Oh, I like it. I like it. I don't know. It's Joe's Pizza in New York. Oh, really? What else do they sell at Joe's Pizza? And then all of a sudden you can go down this rabbit hole of constantly asking them questions. And I think people don't recognize this, but if you could constantly keep the conversation going, then you're going to get closer and closer to the sale, because a sale is really just peeling through all these different onions. And if we could just get ourselves to the specific place that we want to get to, in order to allow ourselves to get to the place where we can start to ask for whatever it is that we're asking for, then guess what? Then we have this ability to really get to the place that we want. Another thing that I mentioned to him was, what was the purpose of this call? So if you think about like what's going on over here, and this is what happens many times with this initial call or this initial reach out, people don't really know like what's the goal. So he was telling me, he's like, oh, I want to get you on my goal is to get you on a 20-minute call, which he asked me on the original call that we spoke about. And I told him, like, there's no way I'm getting on a 20-minute call with you. Like, no offense to you, but like, I like you, but like, I'm not doing it. Like, why is it valuable to me? So if I'm somebody who actually is interested in this stuff, then okay, great. But like, you're like the 500th person to call me about insurance or about, investing. So like, why am I going to get on? And I'm assuming that most people are like him, right? Or like me, really, in that case, where it's like, okay, I already have the thing, or I'm not really interested in the thing. So why am I going to get on the call? And what's interesting is, like, on the sales call, he also dropped at the end that they do free audits. So they will take all your finances and they'll do a free audit for you. And I said, if the purpose of the call was to get me to do this free audit, so that will get me hooked to the second call, then you're playing with something. And if we can even make the actions that are necessary for me to take to get that audit very easy for me, meaning it's like, hey, I just need 3 minutes of your time, and then I'm going to be able to get you that audit for you, and I'm going to send you a report. So that is so much easier to be able to get the place and to in order to get the sale that the person's looking for. So when we are looking to do the things that we want, we have to understand what is the purpose of the sale. So he's telling me, oh, my purpose is to get you on a 20-minute call. The question is like, why would somebody jump on a 20-minute call with you? And many times he said, oh, well, they're friends and this and that. And like, I could get them on the call. And then from the call, I could try to sell them. And what we have to realize is like, it's like, you have to make it very easy for the person to say, yeah, sure, I'd love to. Or even like, just like, yes, yeah, that's interesting to me. And if we can start to do that, then it's like, okay, then we have this ability to be able to continue that conversation to get to that next point. So if you're making it too hard for that second touch point, understand that it's really important for us to be able to to have something that is of value to the person, that is going to have at least friction as possible. And now you might be asking a question, and this is something that he asked me. He's like, "But Bennett, once you said that you weren't interested, I didn't want to like push because I don't want to be like that sleazy sales guy." And I was like, "I don't want you to be a sleazy sales guy also." But when you go to the restaurant and the waiter or the waitress asks you if you want dessert, and you say yes, and she hands you a menu, or you say no, and she's like, "Well, the mousse pie is really good tonight. You might want to take a look at it." And you say, "Okay, fine," or even no. Why does that not feel like a sale? That's a sale. When you go to the Apple store and you're like just checking things out and you end up buying something, guess what? That's a sale. They're trained, Apple employees are trained every morning on sales to do it in a way that doesn't sound salesy. What we have to start to do is we have to really start to believe in the product. And when I told him this, he's like, "No, I really believe in this." And he's like, "It's unfortunate that in this industry of insurance, there's so much salesy stuff going on." He's like, "But I really believe in it." And I'm like, "That's what I need to hear from you. I need you to be able to show me that, no, this is something that's going to really benefit you." Well, you have to realize and think about when it comes to that is like, think about the other person. It's like, what happens if the other person doesn't get the best support that they can? What happens if this person isn't able to get themselves around the fact that, like, you know what, it might be that their plan that they have or the thing that they're on is really not the best. And what we have to recognize is that if that we could let that emotion show and come through, then we have the ability to make the sale. And that is something that is so powerful. So we need to ask ourselves, where can we get that conviction that we believe in the thing? Because many salespeople and many of the people that I look up to within sales, they all say when somebody's in a slump or when there are people who are not selling as much as they want when they're in the sales business, it's because they don't have conviction. And people feel the conviction. And if you can really show that passion that you have for the thing that you are doing, that is something that is going to come and is going to make a massive impact. And it doesn't, it's probably one of the most important things, even more important than the words that you say, which is also very important. So recognizing that, I think, is really, really powerful. And by understanding that, it's like we also have to understand who you are and understand the way that you come across. So, for example, like this person that I was speaking to, so he's like a little bit of a jokester. So even in the beginning of the conversation, he was joking around and we were having having a fun time. And what we have to realize is that although he is a jokester, and that might turn some people off, like use that for your benefit. When somebody says no, like, "I'm good, I already have insurance." Like, make a joke about it. Say like, "Oh my gosh, you're like the 10th person who told me that this week. What's going on with everybody? What insurance do you have?" See the open-ended question there? And then all of a sudden he starts to loop me back in. So even though I rejected him, he's bringing me back in by using his personality. And I think that's where it comes across, where we can start to become that person. We can start to say the things that we want to say. And guess what? It's going to not come out as salesy because this is who I am, dude. Like, this is just the way I am. This is who I was before we started talking about sales, and this is who I am when we're talking about this thing that could really, really help you. And I think for certain people, they get so uncomfortable with that. But if you just put yourself in the position of the waiter or the waitress and start to say, "How can I help this person? Like, this chocolate mousse is really, really good. I want to get this person to eat it. What is it that I can do to get them to buy it?" And bringing that conviction, bringing that personality is going to sell so much. And then last, I want to close on this, is there's this little nugget that I've done a couple of times, which I think is really powerful. And I think it's something that I'm going to start to do even more, even though just because I was reminded about it, is that you want to start to bring value beyond the sale. And what I mean by that is that after you hang up with somebody, and let's say they don't get on a call with you, or they don't want to do the thing that you're looking to do, if we can start to bring value to those people, whether it's going to be a podcast, whether it's going to be a YouTube video, whether it's going to be a blog post, or whatever it might be, if you can have an arsenal of different materials that you can start to send to people, a book, right? If you can start to send them to people after the conversation, and maybe it's not right afterwards, maybe it's a day after or a week after, but like, "Hey, I'm just thinking about you. You might want to take a look, listen to this podcast, or you might want to take a look at this book based on our conversation." That stuff builds crazy rapport because it's like, "Hey, this guy's not even like, he hasn't sold me anything, and he's still sharing with me so much." And I think that's something that for me, if I was only in the sales game, I'm not only in the sales game. If I was only in the sales game, that's something that I would definitely be doing, because just by adding that value, it's so powerful. It's so beneficial. One of the things I used to do is I used to send people my book, right? So I was able to send them my book through Amazon, and that was something that was like, oh my gosh, that's so nice. That's so great that he was able to do it. And what does it cost me? A couple of bucks, and then for them, the value is worth it. If I get one client out of, like, I don't know, 100 or so, like, it's worth it, right? So we have to recognize is that if we can start to recognize that we have more control over the sale. And I know people get like cringy when they say sales like this, but like, let's just be realistic with it. It's a sale. I want to buy you I want you to buy something. And guess what? A sale doesn't mean it's bad, right? If somebody buys something that they want to buy, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Sales like not a bad thing. I think when people get cringy about sales, it's like you're trying to convince somebody of something that they don't want. And we're not trying to do that here. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to help somebody live a better life. We're trying to help somebody do better things with their life. A lot of times when it comes to me and my coaching, the fact that somebody's so stuck and they're coming up with all the excuses why they can't get coaching, whether it's they don't have the investment, they don't have the commitment, it's not the right time because they have other things that are going on, all this stuff that I've heard before, that's usually one of the reasons why they need that support. And if we can start to honestly believe it, not just like say it, but like honestly believe that and have it come across, would you not want to like help your best friend when they're struggling through something? Like, of course you would. So how is it that we can start to help these people? If you can really help them. If you can't, then like, don't do that. Don't be a sleazy salesperson. But if you can, what is it you can start to do to help them do that? And I think if we just go through these options, if we can start to try to figure out how we can loop back into the conversation once somebody says no, because guess what? Once they say no is when the conversation begins. Understand what are those common objections that people do go through and have an answer to them so we know what's going on. If you could start to ask open-ended questions by just asking what, if you could just be authentic with our conviction itself and also bring the value beyond the sale, I'm telling you, those key points are going to make a massive difference when it comes to the people that we're looking to support and to help on their journey while we're doing the things that we need to be doing to get them on that journey.